Well, the first thing on the agenda is going to be citizens wishing to speak. Or we could approve the agenda. Motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So now we are at citizens wishing to speak. So anybody that would like to speak on any topic?
And if you do, please state your name, so I'll have it, please.
We've got things all through here.
Okay, I'm just going to speak then for it.
This is the time that if anyone wishes to speak up, then you get to speak up.
I'd like to just read an email that I've sent. I don't know, have all the emails been shared?
Not with the public, but
Okay,
Charlie and I got them.
What
okay.
is your name?
I'm Betsy Sheath,
How do you spell it?
SCHUETH. It's come to my attention that due to financial reasons, the Army Corps of Engineers plans to limit the use of Carter's Lake and begin closing access points. I live on Woodring Branch Road in Gilmer County. I would like to express my concern. One of the main reasons we built a home on Woodring Branch Road in 2005 was to be able to use the boat ramp in the recreational areas. As a retired Gilmer County teacher, I also think it's vital to keep these recreation areas open for our children and our grandchildren. We hear so much about kids on screens instead of playing outdoors. How can we expect this to change if we close the campgrounds, lake access, etc.? Many of my students that I taught would talk about their weekends and how they spent time on the lake with their families, fishing, hiking, and that doesn't cost them anything because they live here and they can just walk down, get to an access point, put their kayak in, put their rowboat in. So many children that I taught enjoy these access points constantly. Providing opportunities for family to spend time together outdoors without traveling to other places and leaving Gilmer County and taking their money elsewhere should also be a priority. When these families stay in Gilmer County for their recreation, so does their money, if it is something that they pay for the day use and the yearly passes. Gilmer County is known for its beauty. Carter's Lake is a main draw for tourism, which equals revenue for the county. Losing access to these recreational areas impacts not only the residents that live in close proximity like myself, but also many others who come to visit. Some other things I just wanted you to consider, cabin rental companies, people who clean the cabins. If people don't rent the cabins to come be at the lake, then we lose jobs for people who are cleaning. Fishing guides who are in competition with each other already, but also I know they work collaboratively, but just to be able to have all those lake access points. Downtown businesses who sell gas, groceries, clothing, meals to the visitors. Realtors, we have at least 3 or 4 properties on Woodring Branch Road that they say, yes, we have this lake access right here, and realtors take them down, and I went last night and I saw the flags of where they're going to put the gate, so you can't even get past where it was if you're familiar with Woodring Branch Road. So realtors who are bringing potential buyers to Gilmer County to show them this beautiful lake can't even get to the beautiful lake. Please think of all the people in the county who will be affected by closures to one of the biggest draws in Gilmer County. Would it be possible to consider partnering with the Corps to maybe, I don't know how the funding works, if the money for the day pass and the annual passes, it's my understanding that money goes into federal treasury and not to the lake. I don't know if that's an accurate fact or not, but if that is accurate, is there a way, if Gilmer partners, that money can be used to help maintain? I live on there and I see Anderson Company who comes in and they do the trash and the mowing and everything. And in the winter, when the campgrounds are closed, I see them maybe once every other week. I would think the only cost would be picking up garbage during the winter months. How much does that cost? So just thinking about, could Gilmer County not use this revenue from the day use and the yearly pass to maybe fund the opening and keeping? And then my other question is, okay, if we close Woodring Branch because of money, I don't see any or very little money saved there. What's next? What's going to be closed next, and what's the plan, and how are we letting the public know what the plan is, and do we have a say? And if we don't have a say locally, who do we contact federally? And let us as a community know what is it that we can do to maintain this beautiful resource that we have here in Gilmer County. Thank you.
Angela Mays. I also live in the community of Carter Lake on Woodring Branch, off of Woodring Branch. I'm not a public speaker, but I wanted to speak to the facilities that are available to everybody at Woodring Branch. Almost daily I see deer and flocks of wild turkeys, and on rare occasion black bear. Just the area has abundant wildlife which can be seen just by traveling down Woodring Branch Road. You don't have to be an outdoors enthusiast to enjoy this area. You simply have to get in your car and drive. Young families can wade the shoreline at the handicapped accessible picnic wharf. I found this very invaluable. When my father visited, had suffered a stroke, I was able to take him out on that picnic wharf. That was the last time he fished. It has something for everybody, the young families, the handicapped. I frequently launch my kayak for a morning row on the lake with my husband or my friends. The boat ramp makes it easy to put in and put out safely. Almost daily, my husband and I use the hiking, biking Amadei Trail, and seldom are we there alone. These friends that come and visit us, they enjoy those amenities, and then we follow us into LJ where we enjoy the movie theaters, the restaurants. Just last weekend, we brought 8 patrons into the restaurant and the movie theater. Anybody who comes to visit, that's how we entertain them, and they find the peace that's out there. The camping facilities allow for all types of camping. There's RV, primitive to walk-in only campsites. So regardless of your budget, there's a place for you and your family and friends. These facilities are well attended, and it's often very nice to meet other people out there. We have run into Boy Scout groups who take the walk-in. It's an easy 2-mile walk into the Primitives campsite. It's a facility that is very doable for young children. It costs nothing to do that. All right, it costs $5 to go to the boat ramp. These are all affordables for people on lower incomes who don't have the ability to go out and pay for the high-priced toys. I get the outstanding infrastructure is in place at Woodring Branch, the facility, and minimal upkeep would be needed, although I don't know what the budgeting dollars are. Local bike groups have kept the trail free of fallen trees. Carter K Bike Group, they're awesome volunteers. They come out and they help maintain. The community has an ownership attitude. I'm a healthcare professional in Gilmer County and would be remiss not to mention the studies that prove nature enhances our mental health, and many outdoor activities provide the physical activity we need to be healthy. Woodring Branch Recreational Facility provides a safe, attractive opportunity for Gilmer County citizens, visitors, and families to get outside and get healthy. And it's a paved road all the way to the water, so it's nice. We're a little spoiled here.
My name is Rudy Halber. The beauty and the quietness of Carter's Lake is totally amazing, and that's why each of us who's sitting here in this room, we all love Carter's Lake. Carter's Lake is one of the best assets in Gilmer County. If by any chance after the meeting you cannot find the dollars amount to break even, I would propose to have a discussion panel and find a way between the town and the public to find the dollars amount to reach the goal of a bottom line. Thank you.
My name is Larry Alonso. I'm a commissioned officer with the U.S. Public Health Service, serving at the pleasure of the Surgeon General of the United States, stationed at the CDC in Atlanta, Georgia, in the Division of Diabetes Translation. I come to provide the perspective, several different perspectives. One is that 100 million people in the United States, that's 1 out of 3, are struggling with prediabetes or type 2 diabetes. the silver bullet that has been proven to be efficacious against type 2 diabetes is diet and exercise. So we don't have to speculate as to whether, what we have to do to prevent this. I'm also the head coach of the Gilmer Cartacate Youth Mountain Bike Team. Yesterday at Ridgeway, one of the sites that's in question that we're talking about, I had 34 youth, 6th through 12th grade, and 21 parents registered as coaches. That is, that they've had background checks, CPR, first aid training, and a host of online training in order to commit to be there for the parents. When we show up to the trailhead, 60 people show up to the trailhead, and 2/3 of our practice venues are on Carter's Lake. We're currently ranked 5th in the state. These are children who are building memories and building cardiovascular fitness and have decided to set down screen time in favor of getting out on the trail. These are children who are building memories that are connected to physical exercise, just as I imagine every one of us here have memories of being youth and going out and playing, but that's not the way it is today for our kids. So I just want to come alongside and just cheer in every way possible, with every fiber of my being, that if there's a way to do this, there is a way for us to step in at this moment of opportunity, this historical opportunity to step in, to make a difference, not just for the children, but for generations of Gilmer residents as well as visitors in the future. This is our opportunity. I want to recognize it as such. It's a threshold opportunity. It's a legacy opportunity for the residents of Gilmer County first, and then for anyone who comes to visit, that they may come and express themselves in physical activity. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yes, I'm Russ Filco. My wife's here. We retired in Atlanta. We moved up here 9 years ago, and we built a Tranquility at Carter's Lake. The reason we built was because of the lake. And I'm currently the president of the Boathouse Association there, where we store boats. If it starts somewhere else, it's going to end up at Doll Mountain too. And a lot of us use that. There's approximately 20-some houses built in Tranquility at Carter's Lake, and they're higher-end homes. And we have approximately 200 lots there. There's about 200 lots. And a lot of them aren't built on yet. If this happens, starts shutting down Carter's Lake, you got a lot of lots. A lot of them are sold, but houses will never be built there if they can't get access to the lake. I mean, it's just a fact. And a lot of income lost on property taxes. So I think something should be done here to keep everything open and we can keep open. Thank you.
Someone over here? Yes.
My name is Dondi, D-O-N-D-I, Fontenot, F-O-N-T-E-N-O-T. I'm one of the co-owners of the Cartacate Bike Shop here in town. And I would like to attest, as mentioned earlier, about the economic impact the closing of the lake would have. We are state designated as the mountain biking capital of Georgia. And that hinges on the amount of trail we have and access to these trails. So limiting that access will endanger that ranking in the future. So we need to take care of it, team up, and keep that designation alive. But on top of that, our customer base is, I would say, easily 75–80% out-of-towners that come here to ride bikes and recreate. They don't all ride bikes. They bring families. They go canoeing. They do a lot of things. And these lakes are integral parts of that outdoor community. So I've been part of the local bike clubs. We have a new club also in town for outdoor recreation. We do lots of maintenance. Our shop did almost 200 hours of maintenance last year alone with the Forest Service and DNR and Army Corps. My 6-year-old drove nails into the bridge that goes across the Amatahe. He's now 13. Every time we cross that bridge, we talk about it. So it's got a lot of local memories that we'd like to keep and not let go away. Thanks.
My name's Donna Desenfants, D-E-S, capital E-N-F-A-N-T-S. I live out of Tranquility at Carter's Lake. We moved from Illinois specifically for that lake. It was the best choice we ever made. It feels like home. I use that beach every single day. We go over on the boat. I'm still swimming every single day. It's my lifeline. It's what I came here for. I have made memories. And to watch the children come in the summer with their families, it reminds me when I was this big with my grandfather learning to swim. It's wonderful to see families. And it broke my heart this summer when those hours were cut from 9 to 5 rather than 9 to 7. Those families couldn't come after work. There was no way to have a beautiful picnic and watch the sun go down. It is a magical place that's right in our backyard. It needs to be protected. It needs to be shared. Murray County has a portion of that lake. Maybe they can come in. Because when you see the license plates, it's Murray County, it's Gilmer County, it's Cherokee County. I mean, it is used. This year, and again, I'm sure it was for budgetary cuts, there was no one in the ticket collection booth. I don't know how much revenue was lost because people failed to pay the $5 for the day use. There used to be wonderful volunteers and paid people that worked there that lovingly gave you information. Those people are gone. The maintenance crew there does an amazing job. That beach is immaculate every single day. On the weekends, there are waiting lines to get in. It needs to be saved at whatever cost. And I'm sorry, I'm one of those believers that if it has to be at a loss, it needs to be open to the public.
My name is Terry Hewitt. My husband and I moved here in July of 2017, and we, along with so many other people, have learned to love the hiking, the kayaking in Carter's Lake. It's just so peaceful and magical, and it just restores you. I've come to know a lot of young families, which has already been discussed before, with some of the young families in the area that if it wasn't for Carter's Lake, they would have no vacation. Because they can't afford to, they don't have the luxury of going out. They have children, they have small children. They can come here after school, they can come here in the afternoon, they can spend the day, go home and come back the next day. They tent camp, they have a wonderful time here. And health-wise, the children are getting out and they enjoy it. Instead of sitting behind a TV or in front of a computer playing some ridiculous games, they're outside playing in nature. And the revenue loss, from people coming in from different parts of the state, from different states coming here, that would just be a huge loss of revenue for the county. And closing it would just be, it'd be tragic for the county and the surrounding areas.
I'm Carol Farrer. I also live up on Woodring Branch Road, and we've been coming to the lake since 2010, first in our RV and then in our garage apartment, and finally I retired and could live in our home. That was, so we've been up here since 2016 full-time. When we first came, that lake, it's always been beautiful, but the one thing that was really was like, there's nobody here. There's nobody here. It was like our own little quiet lake, and not having our homes and docks all along the shores. But it's been growing and growing and growing, and in a good way. You know, it's nice to see families enjoying all the facilities and the picnics. And the kayakers, the number of kayakers has really increased in the past 2 to 3 years, just crazily. So people are really starting to enjoy the lake. Cutting that boat ramp off, you can't even put your kayak in the water and enjoy a quiet day. Downtown has been growing, you know. I have a little craft business and I was a vendor downtown and it was slow. But downtown's been getting a facelift, a makeover, and people are just coming and everything's growing. So to kind of shut it down or alter it now seems counterproductive to wanting community to grow and thrive. So I hope the lake stays open.
I'm Luann Lackey, L-A-C-K-E-Y, and I want to begin by saying thank you for the opportunity to come express our views and to talk about Carter's Lake. And I pretty much just want to agree with what everyone here has said, that we know is true. And I do strongly support the county's efforts to do whatever we can to keep all of our recreation areas open. I also encourage everyone here to address your congressional interests, your federal interests. They have been able to support this and all our federal public lands over 100 years for the National Park Service, over 50, 60, 70 years for Carter's Lake. Why all of a sudden do we not have money for that? Ask yourself that question. It's our tax dollars. We know what a benefit it is to our communities, not only economically, as everybody has expressed. It seems like there's nobody at Carter's Lake, but it's public knowledge there's over 500,000 visitors to Carter's Lake every year. And as you said, all of those people spend their money here in our restaurants, our hotels, buying gas for their boat, whatever. So it's a lot of money, and I know the county recognizes that because all of our literature that goes out to potential homeowners, visitors, tourists, Carter's Lake is always at the top of our assets in Gilmer County. That's why people come here. I've lived here over 20 years. I moved here because of Carter's Lake. I retired here to stay here and be part of Gilmer County and Carter's Lake. As everybody has expressed, it would be an incredible loss to me personally, but to the county in terms of economically, health for our public citizens. Everybody knows we're at risk of losing our public lands every day. They're being threatened by closures, financial burdens, mining, forestry. And as you've said, once they're closed, it's a very hard door to ever reopen. Once they're lost forever. The future generations need this access to the outdoors, recreation, natural resources management more than ever. So thank you everybody for coming. I hope you hear us, and I agree that I think there's a lot of people in the county who would support it financially, through volunteerism, whatever it takes. So thank y'all.
And a good point was made there too. The question was asked early on, other than the county, who do we contact? And that would be your congressmen and your senators.
We know that the federal budget moves slow. And, if it's gone right now, we're not going to get it back by January 1st or something. So, we may need the county, local people to support some interim solution, and then hopefully federal funds will come.
And I don't mean to be pushing, saying the county's out of this or anything, but the question was beyond the county, who can we contact? And that would be your congressman, you said, because this is a federal operation there. Anybody else?
Charlie?
Yeah.
I haven't got much to say, but I'd like to say it. I've been camping for 56 years, and I told many people, this is one of the finest campgrounds in the entire country, from Alaska to Key West, everywhere, all through Canada. You can't find what Carter Lake offers. And I just want that to reiterate what these people have said. I feel very strongly about that. You'd be ashamed to lose it.
Charlie and Carlene, I'm speaking as a citizen. Robert Ferguson. Sorry I have my back to you guys. when my mother-in-law and father-in-law started buying property here almost 35 years ago, you know, LJ was that hidden gem. It was our getaway. And we always knew that we would retire here. And even back then, Carter's Lake was gorgeous. It's always been gorgeous. It's a gem. Gilmer County has so much in this county, from being the mountain biking capital to being the start of the AT, where thousands of people start a dream every year. And Carter's Lake is just one of those other gems that if you go to other lakes in the area, they're overbuilt, they're too busy. Carter's Lake is that lake where you can get away. And as a citizen, it's been a big part of our lives for a long time. But then being a business owner, a co-owner for Stay Active LJ and Stay Active Georgia, what we've seen in the last 3 years has been almost miraculous. Taking people out, camping, hiking, biking, kayaking, swimming at Harris Branch is an amazing experience. I can't imagine putting gates up and not letting people enjoy the beauty of Carter's Lake. It's never going to be overbuilt. It's always going to be that special gem. And we have got to figure out together as citizens and as government and private entities, whatever it takes to come together and keep this open so that all of us can continue to enjoy it and go to Tumbling Waters and see that beautiful waterfall. But beyond us in this room, we've got to protect this for our kids. It would be so sad if they went to that gate and saw it overgrown and closed and we told them what it used to be. We don't need to tell them what it used to be. We need to be an example of what can be. And protect this thing and keep it open so that we can enjoy it, but so future generations can continue to enjoy the gem that we have. It's so special. And I think everybody in this room knows that. And people who visit it know that. But we need to keep that legacy going. And I agree with everything that's been said this morning.
I forgot to just say one thing. This is the only lake that stays up all year. They don't drain it like Allatoona and Blue Ridge and turn it into a big mud hole, so.
Okay, anybody else? If not, we will move to new business, which just happens to be discussion and possible action. Cooperative management of property from the Corps of Engineers. Carly, you want to say?
Sure, I will. Well, I want to welcome from the Corps, and I'm sure it was great for you guys to hear the desire of so many to keep the lake open. This is Miriam, the project manager, and Oliver, what's your title? Resource manager. But both that are part of looking after the lake. And I'll tell you how this kind of started. We actually, one of the commissioners looked at going back and looking at one of the other properties that had been closed years ago in consideration of what we might develop there. Well, we saw instantly what an area that has been closed for a long time looks like, and it's tragic in the Oak Hill area of the lake. So then Miriam mentioned to me that, well, it just so happens that our budgets are being cut in such a way that it may mean that potentially down the road we have to start closing some of the recreational areas unless we can find a partner to help us keep and manage financially and keep these recreation sites open. And of course I was very alarmed, and I was like, what do you mean? And that started the conversation of what we can do. And then from there, we went into some discussions and some financials. As you may or may not know, our county is not loaded. We don't have lots of extra money. We're also working in the process of working on building a pool for the community. So there isn't a lot of extra money to participate in this. However, we have talked back and forth, and I give credit to Oliver for really trying to work with us, understanding that we don't have a lot of money, but we do have, with a cooperative management and lease kind of anyway, we talked through some options, so I'd rather Oliver explain some of those options that are available to us that we are considering moving into. And I think we've come to some pretty good numbers that wouldn't cost the county that much money. And it's very much like Betsy said, that we could keep some of the day use fees here locally on those sections of the lake instead of having to send them back to the U.S. Treasury. So Oliver, if you'll kind of.
Sure. Thank you, Carlene. As Carlene mentioned, my name's Oliver Craig. I'm the resource manager at Carter's Lake. And I would like to start just by talking just real generally about those options that you mentioned. And there's basically two of them. The first one is an outright lease. And that is exactly as it's described. It's when you have an area that is leased to a separate entity other than the Corps of Engineers. All the responsibility for the management of that area is on that entity. There is no cooperation in terms of cooperative management. Like we've talked about, all of the expenditures that are born in operation of that are the leasee's responsibility. Also, any revenue that's generated from that, all of that money goes to that leasee and they can use that as they see fit. If the leasee ends up in a scenario to where their revenue exceeds what their expenditures are, they can use that excess how they see fit. They can use that money in the park for upgrades. They can use it in other parts of the county in this case, or for whatever they want to. The second option is the joint management. That's the cooperative management. Basically what that is that's an agreement between, in this case, the Corps of Engineers and what would be the county if this is something that we're able to do, to where it's basically, it's just like it describes, it's a joint management plan that both entities manage the facilities. All the costs for operations in those areas are split between those two entities, basically to manage it, however we agree to manage it as part of what the agreement is. There's no template specifically for the joint management. So basically how the costs are divided or how the responsibilities are divided are based on what's actually agreed to between the two parties. And that's what we kind of initially talked about a little bit, and I've done quite a bit of, and if you want me to go ahead and kind of get into some of the cost stuff.
Let me say real quick that the current authorities that we have only allow us to cooperatively manage with a non-federal entity. So that means the county government, the state government, or an educational city government. Those are the only four groups that we are allowed to cooperatively manage with. For recreational leases, we can lease to just about anybody, but the counties, the cities, the governments have the first right of refusal before I can go and ask anybody else if they want a recreation lease. So I just want that out there so that anybody who has questions why we're coming to the county, this is why we're coming to the county.
And I'll go ahead and talk about the joint management plan, kind of what it is with the cost and what we've looked at. One of the first things I would like to say, and it was one of the comments on our revenue, and that's actually absolutely right. The revenue that we generate, the $5 user fee, the camping fees, those go directly to the U.S. Treasury. That money does not come back to us to manage any of our facilities. So that's kind of the first thing that we had talked about, is looking at cooperative management. If the Corps of Engineers continues to collect those fees ourselves within that agreement framework, it would still go to the Treasury. If our partner, which in this case would be the county, actually collects those funds, that money can go back to the county. It does not go to the U.S. Treasury. There's a few kind of caveats we're working through on that, on how the money's collected, but it would go back to the county. Those revenues, in turn, can be used to offset the management costs that the partner, the county, would incur for the responsibilities that are agreed to on it. What I've done with what we've talked about on some of the initial conversations is I've gone through our historic costs that we've had in terms of expenditures. I've gone through our historic revenues to get an average yearly cost, an average yearly revenue for these individual areas. And we've been talking about Doll Mountain, Woodring Branch, and Ridgeway Park. And based on what our FY20 projected expenditures are, there is a surplus of about $67,000 between the responsibilities that we've talked about with the county taking over and the responsibilities that the Corps is going to maintain. That's for direct operational costs. The county is also going to have some degree of management costs, whether it's overhead, whatever, however you guys would choose to manage that. That would come out of that $67,000 as I've calculated that out. Any excess, and this is the difference between a lease and a joint management operated facility, if there's any excess within the joint management facility after all the costs for the partner is met, that money has to go back into the facility for upgrades. It does not go to the partner to basically use how they see fit, like how the lease is. And that's kind of, I guess, a quick way to go over. I believe you guys have all this data that I came up with. That's kind of the quick way to go over, what the bottom line is. I don't know what specific questions you guys have, but I'm more than willing to, to answer them and go through that.
In terms of the money having to go back into the facility,
Yeah.
if the money is set back for future expenses, would that be deemed going into the facility? As opposed to an improvement of some sort? We just let the money sit there so that it's there for future expenditures? For that facility?
You are permitted to do that.
As long as it's incurred as part of the operating cost of the facility.
Right,
Right.
so let's say that you have identified a future need to, let's just replace a shower house at Doll Mountain with a universally accessible facility. And you know that it's gonna cost X. You could save your excess funds from year to year until you are able to then purchase and pay for the installation of that, so you don't have to turn it back. Because again, you could give it back to us, but then it goes right back to the treasury. But you are permitted by the authorities to pool that fund, those funds, as long as it's used back in that area.
Honestly, the thought of giving it back to y'all never occurred to me.
I wanted to come back in a different way than it would, went out.
Well, I originally was assuming putting it back into the facility would mean maintenance or improvements right there.
Correct.
But the thought occurs to me, if we do end up with some money left over, rather than looking for an improvement to make or assuming the maintenance is up to date, can we just let it sit there to be used for future maintenance? Not necessarily something we've
Yes.
planned, but just whatever may come up.
Yes, you can't, we just have to identify, you have to have a 5-year plan, and you can say, you can actually have a line item that says for future maintenance.
Okay.
And that would just be an accounting requirement, like Mary said, identifying that money and as it's expended, get them to communicate that, there's a matter of time.
Okay.
And that money can go towards a director or whatever that we want for that, no matter which.
As long as it's a cost that's borne out of operating a facility or those facilities.
Okay, and so those numbers got much closer, and this was their revenue, they believe, for the 3, Doll Mountain, Woodring, and Ridgeway.
Yeah, and the revenue is based on a 4-year average, so I went back 4 years and averaged our revenue, our gross revenue in each of those areas to get to what that number is.
And that's assuming that you make no, that's assuming you make no operational changes, so that those would change though if you decided that you wanted to open the campgrounds for a longer period. Right, so those would be fresh.
I'm sorry, you haven't mentioned Harris Branch, is that not part of the administration?
Harris Branch would be high on my list because that's where the beach is.
Okay, I just heard you
It
talking about
is.
the other.
And what we're talking about with Harris Branch is possibly straight out leasing that and then cooperatively managing the other 3 in the county, which are Doll,
Doll
Woodring,
Mountain,
Ridgeway.
Woodring, but now the figures that I've seen don't look very good in terms of leasing.
Leasing? for.
Heavy losses, well, I'm being general.
So this, you're talking about placing for Harris Ranch?
Well, I'm just being general for anything.
Okay.
They're pretty visible.
So what Oliver really had to explain to me was these costs, and Oliver, you may want to explain this to Charlie, these USACE, the labor and these, they will pay.
Yeah, basically what I did on this is I did a cost benefit analysis. I got pretty deep in some of the actual figures, and for me to be accurate and thorough and how I did that, I had to consider what our entire budget is. And we've got cost, and it's basically our labor costs. The expenses that we have, the direct operating expenses, those are direct to each facility. Obviously, our labor is just funded by the entire project, the entire lake. And then we've got some other costs. If we go out and buy like a skid steer or just a piece of equipment, that's not attributable to individual facilities. It's against what our gross budget is. So for me to be accurate and thorough in cost benefit analysis and benefit cost ratio and some other things, I had to incorporate basically the entirety of our budget and those items in that to make sure that the figures that came out of it were accurate for what the total expenditure was for the project. So that's what that stuff is. When you're looking at that, when we get to a point, if we do enter into a joint management agreement, with the costs that we have identified on there for the operations aspect of management, stuff that we've talked about, possibility of you guys taking over, none of the stuff that is you say is based on labor, the stuff on there, that's all costs that we're going to continue to have in the future years. So basically I had to reconcile that into the analysis, but I kept it separate as I went through to show how the joint management plan could go if we entered into that agreement.
So do we have bottom line figures?
So the 67,000 that he came up with is the revenue for the three, for Dahl, Woodring, and Ridgeway. So
The 67,000 is the difference between the revenue from all those areas and what your all's expense would be if we entered into an agreement as we discussed it. So that's the operational aspect of it. That is the park attendants, that's cleaning, mowing. We're doing maintenance, we're continuing our patrols and enforcement. That's the difference between the revenue and what your all share of costs would be.
So we're not looking at huge losses right up front, we're
Not for
actually
joint
looking at
management,
some.
correct.
right. And then, so Harris Branch, Oliver, tell me what those numbers were, what you.
The Harris Branch documents I gave you were a little bit thinner than the joint management documents, but basically what our revenue is, and this is our 4-year average on revenue, is about $40,000 a year. Our direct expenditures are about $91,000 a year. One thing to keep in mind on this is that we are really restricted in our timeframes for operating the beach. Typically, we have been from about the beginning of May until Labor Day. It's been mid-90s until October this year. We've been closed since Labor Day at the beach. We don't really have the ability to open these facilities up once we've closed them because of how we're restricted on how we do business. Opening those areas, specifically Harris Branch, outside the timeframes that we are would obviously give the opportunity for more revenue. We're also restricted in opportunities that we can provide to the public in terms of vending, concessionaires, stuff like that. There's a real potential, and I would say probably a need even at Harris Branch to be able to incorporate some degree of that into Harris Branch to where it would be potential additional income and operating that facility. So these numbers are what our numbers are. They're not necessarily indicative if you guys would be interested in a lease of what you guys are going to be looking at, in the next year, 2 years, 3 years, because there's business-based decisions that can be made that I think would potentially increase what the revenue. That's just my opinion.
So can I ask you then, also, sorry, Charlie, is that this money does not account for the daily use fees? You don't have this in these numbers?
Yes.
You do?
Yeah, the revenue at Harris
Okay.
Branch, that $40,000, that is the usage fees for people that are using the facility, that's correct.
Okay, so that's the day use fee that you're sending to the treasury?
Yeah.
That's
Correct.
what you're collecting?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
That includes the day use and the camping?
Yes.
Because there is a primitive campground there as well. So,
The fees that is charged are, I mean, they're very, very reasonable compared to a lot of places in the country. It's almost, I mean, most places that I fish and have fished professionally, and, you know, the other places I have to go, I'm paying $8, $10.
absolutely.
Annual passes, you know, I paid up to $85, $90 a year. It still breaks down, you know, when you use the facilities a lot on the annual pass. I mean, it's, you know, a week and a half I've already paid, you know.
After 8 trips.
What's the possibility of raising these fees? I mean, I know people don't like that, but, you know,
There's two issues
have to
with
keep
it.
up with,
There's two issues associated with that with us. Number one is that when we generate that revenue, it goes directly to the treasury. We do not get any of that back. Our budgeting process, there is some degree of consideration, I don't want to get too much into it, but with fees that we collect, but we don't get that return to us to be able to use for maintenance or operational type activities. The second part of that is that the fee structure that we have, and mainly in terms of camping, but really kind of day use too, is based on comparability. We won't price an area either to the point of undercutting local, you know, what's charged locally, of being over that or under that. So we try to be consistent with what the market is on that. In terms of going in and like camping fees, if we would, you know, raise camping fees 25 to 30%, I don't think comparable wise that the numbers would be able to support you on that. Because it, like I said, it's, you know, we try to be comparable to what the local rates are.
And for day use fees, I have to go, and I have to request a waiver that has to go a lot higher than us. Even our district does not get to approve a waiver to charge a higher fee for a day use area. So say that I wanted to try and charge $10 here. There's no way I could justify that to headquarters. It would even be hard for someplace like Lanier that has a lot more visitation and a lot higher income population. They would also have to request a waiver, and it's unlikely that they would be able to charge that much. Whereas the county can set their charging practices. Somebody else sets that for me.
Okay, so that was my point. So, which obviously is not a good business system that, you know, the money goes back to the, but if the county then can, you know, if they take over in some fashion and they decide that they could raise fees.
And that could happen
that money
in a lease.
stays back to the county.
That can happen in a lease. If an area is leased, the entity in which it is leased to can set what the fee structure is. If it is a joint managed area, the Corps of Engineers and the entity that's a partner to the Corps are both managing, and the Corps fee structure has to be used. So that's the difference between those two different types of actions for each area. But you're absolutely right. If it's a lease, it would be, you know, whatever that entity. In this case, the county.
I also want to point out that some of you may have gone to like the Park Service, if you've been up in the Smokies, or you've been to other national parks, or even to a Forest Service. You might see a facility that has a tag on it that says that this building was, your fees paid for the construction of this building. That's all part of legislation that the nickname is FLORIA, and it's federal lands, something or other. But there are 5 land management agencies, and we were not included in that, the Corps, even though we are one of the 5 land management agencies, we were not included in that. So that covers all of the Department of Interior agencies and the Forest Service. So the fees that you pay when you go to those areas get returned to them as part of FLORIA. But because we were not included in that legislation, all of your user fees go back to the treasury here. So we may not be in that situation if we had been included in that legislation. And we have tried several times to go back and be included in subsequent renewal of that legislation, and it has not happened. But again, we would probably not be sitting here if we had been included in that legislation.
Can you make that public so the next time it comes up for renewal, citizens can campaign for you? for it?
We can. It normally goes out in the Federal Register when some of those legislation is coming up for public comment. But your local congressional representatives are very well aware of the need for us to be included, so I would encourage you to.
Can you give me the acronym for that? What was that?
FLREA, F-L-R-E-A. I did want to tell you, Charlie, that I reached out to 2 other small counties that resembled our population and budget. One was McDuffie County, and they actually had the Clarks Hill Lake they have a campground area, or it was a core lake that had been closed, and they reopened it, because citizens requested. It was difficult to bring it back open once it was closed, like we've heard. And they had to do maintenance work up front, but they've had it for 5 years now, and it has 55 RV sites, electric and water only, and they finally, they had a profit last year, but they expect to bring in $45,000 in 2019, and they straight up leased it from them. But I spoke to their county manager and their chairman, and they said it also benefited everyone, just like of all the things that we've heard today, plus tax dollars. They saw an increase in their sales tax dollars and all of that, so it was well worth it to them. And that population is 22,000. And then there's another one that was similar, but so there are other counties doing this, and it's just a matter of trying to figure out what the best way. I will say also at the ACCG conference we were at last week, they said, oh my goodness, if you've got the Corps on your side, you need to say yes to whatever they say, because a lot of counties really struggle with Corps. So I appreciate the relationship that we have already.
Yeah, we do too, and we recognize what the value of these areas are, and that's why we want to have that discussion.
And I think the good part about this is they don't want us to go in the hole. They want to help us figure out how to, make it work for both parties. So.
I'm sorry, is there a set price that the Corps leases the land back to a county, or is that based on the population of the lake? Or?
No, for government entities, it is a no-fee recreation lease. So if the county were to pass and I needed to go and have an area that I was going to try and lease, we would put it out there for bid. And then the entities that bid on it, they would have a fee. So they would have administrative fees, whoever the winning is, that it's going to cost them something. But for the county, this is a no-fee recreation lease.
So everybody here has paid $10 to see a bad movie. But a family recreation, Gilmer County family recreation pass of $10 would, and with the caveat or with the framing that this is going in to improve the lands. I just pulled up the Harris Branch topographic map, and it's a peninsula just like Jackrabbit up in Hayesville, just like other mountain. If trails were constructed around that, with the eventual, you would have yet another extraordinary draw for mountain bikers and hikers, multimodal people to enjoy that area, and for the fee to use that and walk around the periphery of that peninsula during the fall or spring. $10 is a song, and it's a bargain. So I would say that the mountain bike team alone would be your first $1,000, into the coffers. So just.
Have any other counties, have you spoken with any of the other Murray or anybody else?
We have not approached Murray at the moment because the 3 areas that we have that are in Murray County have infrastructure in them, so it makes it a little bit more difficult to, we haven't really figured out how we would cooperatively manage those areas because there's hydropower infrastructure.
They're more the lower.
Right.
The main dam, the re-regulation dam, things like that.
So the physical structures of the dam itself and the intake for the hydropower and then the re-regulation dam. It makes it a little bit more difficult to try and figure out how we would do those areas.
What's the deal with the marina? I mean, what's their association with the Corps and?
They hold a recreation lease. It is a commercial concession. They provide boating, kayak. Denise can probably speak better about what they offer.
Yeah.
She is the marina operator.
Yeah. We've done marina since '91, so we're on a commercial lease with the Corps. The Lakeland building was one commercial lease. We do mainly the marina, so people don't have to trailer the boats, and then we have cabins, boat rentals, and restaurants.
Gas.
But that is a commercial recreation lease, and that's, was originally, when the project was originally set up, that was always slated to be a commercial recreation.
So that money goes into the treasury as well?
That does not go into the treasury, it goes into the lease bank account.
The money that we pay.
Right, but so they pay a portion of the lease, and that does go to the treasury, yes.
But nothing that we're talking about today has anything to do with the marina.
Correct, correct. Unless, if recreation areas on the lake were to close, would that affect you?
Oh, definitely, yes.
But I mean, from our perspective,
Financially.
So, that's privately owned. The portions of Lake Lanier are privately owned, like the recreation areas.
They have marinas that were, or when the lake was developed, there were areas that were set aside to be marinas, commercial concession leases. And I believe they've had one closed recently. So being linear doesn't necessarily mean the success of a commercial concession lease. I think it is more beneficial to us at this point to try and try and cooperatively manage more so than leasing. We're very small. I don't know that it benefits the community to try and break up all of our areas to be managed separately by, one entity here, one entity there. I think it's more beneficial to the community to try and keep everything as in one piece if we can.
Yeah, and there's really a lower amount of risk in that, because as it being in the form of a partnership, you have two entities that are working together towards a common goal and basically splitting what the costs are to operate it, opposed to having one, whether it's the Corps of Engineers or another operator, if it's a lease, that is burdened to what the entire operating expenses are year in and year out. So that's kind of one of the things that we see with joint management, is that seems to be the least risky option for all parties that are involved.
And we don't want a lessee, we don't want a party code like what they have at Lanier. We don't want Lake Lanier Islands.
No, I don't either. I was just asking.
Yeah, but that's
I didn't know how that relationship was.
That is the risk you run though when you lease to several different entities, because then we are not, Oliver and I at the office then do not become the primary point of concern about what we are going to offer there, because real estate office in the district then becomes the primary point of contact. And as long as it's in the recreation lease, they may or may not come back and ask us, is this feasible to be done at your project? We would hope that that would be the case, but it's not always the case, because otherwise there would not be a Lake Lanier Island until it's perfectly.
And so if Harris Branch is the first one to be cooperatively leased. I like what Larry said, but also Harris Branch, the county could be, or citizens, we could be creative, and you could have food trucks there, you could have some things that y'all can't currently do.
Play music there?
Yeah, but
We
you
can have entertainment
concessions in
nights
the
there.
campgrounds and everything, but
Nice
then you have to
idea.
get a commercial concession lease from real estate in order to be able to have those in there. In the cooperatively managed ones.
In the cooperatively
Right.
managed ones, but in Harris Branch, if it's an outright lease, there's already a hookup down there by the beach for a concession.
And I don't think this was talked about either, but the county could also advertise, whereas you guys are restricted from doing that.
Correct. I am allowed to advertise for water safety purposes only, but we
And you
do
do a
not.
great job of that.
We do not have to be in any kind of agreement, lease situation, or anything for the county to be able to market any of our areas. Gilmer County, this is an asset in the county. I can't endorse it, so I can't put my core castle on it, but that does not prevent the county from marketing anything that we have to offer.
I think the Corps pretty well markets it now. I'm not the Corps, the chamber.
Yeah, chamber.
Yeah.
And with partnering with the Corps, you have volunteers, don't you, who
Correct.
stay for, so you
Correct.
maintain that volunteer crew?
Correct.
Okay, well. What it looks like if we decide to go forward, to me, would be that we would want to go with the cooperative management for Stone Mountain, Woodring, Ridgeway, or any combination of those. Or Harris Branch. The only one that I would personally could support for a straight out lease would be Harris Branch, because of the beach and the potential for things that will provide additional revenue there.
I completely agree, Charlie. I think that's the best way to go, is leasing Harris Branch and cooperatively managing Doll Mountain, Woodrum, and Ridgeway.
Now, with that in mind, I don't want to make a motion to do that today. We're 1 week away from our regular meeting. I think we put this on that agenda. We've still got a week to think about everything that's been said here today. At some point, we're going to have to make a final decision.
Right.
And I think maybe the regular meeting for October would be the time for that. It's only a week or so away.
Can citizens come and speak again there?
Certainly.
The work session, that meeting has changed. The dates are,
Next Tuesday, the 15th at 9 o'clock.
15th at 9 o'clock.
and that is our regular work session. This was a special called meeting, and that's our regular work session on October 15th at 9 a.m. here. And then we'll have our regular meeting at 6 o'clock in the courthouse, in the jury room, on the 16th at 6 o'clock. Did I say all that? That we would actually take a vote on.
What time on the 16th?
6 p.m.
Tuesday, the 15th at 9 a.m. and Wednesday, the 16th at 6 p.m.?
Correct.
I've got a management question. So if we go into a co-management situation, so like we bring a lot of volunteer support and things like that with like trail maintenance, fixing problem areas, mitigating water and things like that. So who would we work directly with, the Corps, or we work with the county, or is that a joint thing as well?
I don't think that we have addressed that or not. At the moment, it would be work directed by the Corps through our volunteer management program. And most of that is because when you sign a work agreement with the Corps of Engineers, once you sign that volunteer agreement, you're covered under workman's compensation for the
Right.
equipment. I don't know if the county has that ability or not, and if they did not have that ability, we would probably want the volunteer work to continue under the Corps.
I just didn't know if that would fall under like a Parks and Rec thing, or how the county would approach that.
I think it could be either way depending on the work that's being done.
My take on this in terms of Parks and Rec is that if we do this would not become under Parks and Rec. This would be its own department, so to speak, sort of like a golf course is now. And it does bring up a question though, because there's been several things that have come up today, and the answer to that is that that hasn't been worked out between us yet. If we're looking to make a final decision next week, we need to hammer some of this stuff out, so that we have a definite, here's what it is, and not, you know, we don't want to vote to do this based on future negotiations.
Do you want me to work with them and
If
try to get that?
you could do that, that'd be great.
Something on paper. Not if I can be done that quickly for you guys, but.
Well, he doesn't have to be on the work besides me.
Okay, that's good.
Because if I recommend it, my ops chief will sign off on it.
Okay.
And I know that I've been talking to the person at, who was our business line manager in the division in Atlanta. And he's super duper excited about this, because we're going to be the first ones to try these new authorities, but this is the way it's going for the majority of the country.
I'm glad he's excited, because I'm scared to death.
Well, I'm scared too, but the alternative for us
That's the problem.
is scarier. It is, and it's hard for us because, you know, we love the area just like everybody else. We use it just like everybody else. I don't want to close anything. I don't want to change the way we've been operating it because it works well. We've got a great place, but can't squeeze blood from a turnip.
I've been trying to tell people in this county that for 5 years. Okay, well, are we ready to move on to the next?
Yes, and actually, the next topic is kind of relative, in my opinion. This RTP grant is for new bicycle trails, mountain bike trails at the lake. And so, you know, it's kind of weighs on the direction. If we think that's the direction we're gonna go, then we wanna continue with that grant.
What's the deadline for it?
End of October. As, to apply for it. We don't know if we get it,
Apply,
of course,
yes.
right, yeah. And that's a $20,000 match that the mountain bike club and its affiliates have, they feel like they can raise that match.
Is this site specific, or could it be?
It is, and help me, Mary, with this specific one of where that is in.
It's at Ridgeway. It's to complete the trails that were designed through part of the original conceptual plan.
It's basically they add about 3 miles of mountain trails.
Well, that seems like a no-brainer to me. Personally, I would make a motion that we approve the resolution to apply for the RTP grant.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. And the next, Charlie, is the ROSP grant, and that was one that we were looking to apply for to purchase property for park. So that I can continue with it, and if it doesn't come through the end of October, we just don't
Yeah.
do it. But I just need to know if we want to.
Is that site specific, or can we be a
It
little
is
more
site
generic?
specific. It is site specific for what we're asking for the money for. So, but if it doesn't work to do it this year, there's next year. That is unusual. They're doing that every year.
If we apply for it, get it, and we cannot utilize it, will that hurt our chances in future years?
I would think so.
Then I would say we need to get it.
Okay. I'd like to just go ahead and kind of have it started. It doesn't hurt us if we start it and just don't turn it in. We don't press send.
That's fine, I just don't want to do anything to hurt our future chances.
Exactly, right. But yes, it
If we
would
don't
hurt.
have a specific site
Yeah,
for now.
right. I totally agree with that. No, don't apply for it if we don't have a site. But, okay.
Do we
So-
need a resolution for that? At this point, I don't think so.
Well, if you're gonna make application for it, I think you
I thought what we were saying is we were gonna go forward with it, but not necessarily make the application just yet.
I think she's gotta have it, it's time sensitive, she has to have it by 30 in October.
Correct.
So I think, in light of that, I think you make a resolution to make the application and then pull it if you're running.
Yeah, I just don't press send on October 30th.
What he said.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion and possible actions to purchase land for a sign. Is that offer still available
It
to
is.
us at
Yes,
the same
it is.
price? Okay. 2,500. Is that something we need to talk about in executive session?
It's on the
We,
agenda, but you can have a more open discussion.
I mean, we're all, I guess it's a no-brainer.
It is, and for the amount that the
Yeah.
seller has offered, I mean, it includes all of the property that is located within Gilmer. We don't know the exact acreage amount, but it's not gonna be a lot, but it all fronts the highway there.
Can I do it this way and say that I make a motion to purchase the land that we have been discussing at the price that we have discussed?
Well, yeah,
So-
it's.
$2,500.
$2,500.
Yes.
And that's my
That's
my motion.
Yeah. If that works for you, David, I second that. Yes.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And you may wish to identify the one that you've been discussing, since you've been discussing. They're all
Do we let them know what's the plan?
Sure, I mean, you brought it out in
Yeah,
an open meeting.
okay, I will tell you that what we are looking at is to purchase a piece of property from, I'm not gonna remember exactly who the land owner.
Southeastern organization, it's a.
Southeastern Land and Trust Park.
Southeastern Trust for Parks and Land.
Thank you. There are a lot of those parks trust for land now. But there's I believe it's 2.5 acres ish, right as you enter Gilmer County. And it's our desire to put a welcome to Gilmer County LJ sign, electronic sign that would say, it's on, if you're going north, it's on the left, west side.
Just past the scenic overview, right before the turn to get to the preserve
Really, there's just a
trails.
little perfect hill that's actually part of that Talking Rock Nature Preserve. It takes their portion of Gilmer County, which they were kind of excited to not pay the Gilmer County taxes on it. And to let us have that, they gave it to us. That is a wonderful price. So we felt like we couldn't resist the chance to purchase it and then put a big, wonderful sign that says, "Welcome to LJ." And it can change to have all kinds of messages on that electronic sign.
And 2.5 acres off of 515 for $2,500.
That's a steal. Yeah, they really wanted it to look like it to be a gift for us to.
Right.
And
it pretty much is. All right, so,
And y'all did vote on
yes. Item 6, I'm going to remove because it doesn't strike my fancy like it used to.
It's 5 or 6, we would be at 5.
or
I was conveniently skipping 5. Yeah, well, what has happened on that is we're trying to get the right-of-way right now. To move that road over, we've gone through an awful lot on Bucktown Road, and we finally got to the point a while back that I guess it was geologists were coming out and doing sinkholes, trying to figure out where the rock base is on that to put something there that we can build another lane of road over. And they determined that there just wasn't any, at least not anything feasible. So the report back from them was you cannot put this lane back where it was. The only thing we can do is go across the road and extend it out that way. That was something that we had originally asked FEMA for, and they had turned us down. And the reason they turned us down initially was they said that's an improvement, it's not a repair. And we fund repairs. So we went back to them with a change request based on the fact that it cannot be done, put back the way it originally was. And took a while, but we finally got a response back that approved that, and said, okay, you can do that. So now we're in the process of getting a right-of-way from a landowner across the street. For a number of reasons, that kind of fell by the wayside. So I have asked the engineers to go ahead and take that up and get that right away for us. They can do that at a cost. And I did not forward you that, I don't think. So what this is for is, I need an approval to have the engineers pursue that right away, because the way we were previously doing it with Gilmer it's stalled.
Okay.
So,
What was the cost on it?
yeah, that's a good question.
Ish?
It's $7,500-ish.
I would go forward that.
So, and it'll come from the project.
Okay.
So,
Okay. I think that's a good idea under the circumstances.
well, this came just before I left the thing last week, and I've got it buried under about that much. So what I'm gonna do is, I wanna be safe with this, and I don't wanna take the time right now to go back and try to dig it out. What I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make the motion that we approve from $7,500 to $16,000, just to give me some range. And it turns out to be different from that, we'll just get it on next week's agenda, but we would like to get it going. And there does seem to be no feasible alternative to it. They just wait. We don't want to wait any longer. So that's my motion.
Okay. I'll second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we'll get that going, and as soon as we can get that right away, then we can start on taking some of that bank down, getting another lane on the other side, and getting back our 2 lanes again. And with that said, I'd like to start item 6. I think we still need to have a serious discussion on roads. I think I'm going to want to try to go a little bit different direction in it. I would like to, and I don't believe this has to have any kind of resolution, but I do need to coordinate with you. I would like to have at least 1 and maybe 2 town hall type meetings on Saturday, and just ask people if you've got complaints about the roads, if you've got suggestions, if you know what we can do, come to this meeting, and let's try to, pin down the problems and see if we can come up with a solution together on it. Because I got to tell you, just trying to sit there, the 2 of us, and trying to figure out how to do this. We know we got a problem, and what we've got is about a $20 to $25 million problem. We need input from the people of the county on how they want us to proceed on this. So, the next available, I'm thinking Saturday around 1:30, and let everybody go out and get lunch and then come to the meeting.
So right in the middle of everybody's Saturday.
Well, or we could
I'd
make it.
suggest like a
we-
10,
we
at
could,
least.
Okay, I'm trying to coordinate it where they can come have a meal and go to the thing. Maybe they can have breakfast and come to
You're
the
in
meeting.
your leaf season and your apple season,
Yeah.
so it's.
Well, now, I'm not saying a particular Saturday at this point, I'm just talking
Yeah,
about
I think
time.
this is good to.
I think this,
Unless you want to.
no, it's not so urgent, we can't wait a minute. I would say maybe either the first or second Saturday after that. If you like 10 o'clock.
I would use a weekday, Saturday.
Telephone number 706.
Yeah.
One evening and one Saturday afternoon, that way.
I want to maximize the potential for people. So it's time to keep that. Okay.
What?
You want to go into an executive?
Yes.
Okay. Is that the form of the motion?
Yes, I make a motion that we go into executive session.
And a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all for coming.
On the issue of core, what will Murray County involved be in that, if any?
Yeah, they, because, if you want to say what you said before. So right now, we're only looking at Gilmer County, the areas in Ramsey County. Murray County, we have, there's infrastructure that is associated with generation of hydropower. So I have to figure out how to do that. So that's impacting Murray County.
See you this afternoon.
Good job.